Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Iowa State Cyclones Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm your host, Levi Stevenson, also the managing editor over at Wide Right and Natty Light. Um, here on a classic Cyclone Tuesday. Let's see here. For some reason, my thing's being wonky. Not sure exactly what's going on. Oh, I had the wrong background on. That's why. So, anyways, hope everybody's having a good week. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving weekend. I know if you're up in Iowa, you got just a boatload of snow, and probably had to shovel I know over here we had to shovel about a foot of it, so that wasn't great. But we had fun anyways. So talked about it at the post game on Saturday, but Iowa State obviously picks up a big win against Oklahoma State. Well, big, relatively speaking, in an otherwise largely meaningless game. They beat a team that they absolutely should have beaten in a way that was largely pretty pedestrian and boring. And now, now they're 8-4 going into bowl season, which we should find out their bowl selections this coming Sunday after the conference title games have been played. So we'll talk. I won't go too far into the Oklahoma State game since we talked a little bit about it on Saturday. But obviously, needed to get that win to get to 8-4. I mean, not only that, but Oklahoma State's just a bad football team that you absolutely should have and had to beat, to feel any modicum of self-respect. Just, after everything that happened throughout the entire season, you needed to, finishing on this 3-game win streak, feels good. It was against a really bad team, an okay, and then two like okay teams, or maybe an okay team, and then on the road against a decent team. Doesn't erase the 4-game losing streak, but still lets you finish the regular season on a positive note heading into bowl season, when you can get some more momentum, you can get some more freshmen in on these bowl practices and things like that. And this is the time of year, there's these games don't count towards red shirts. So anybody that's on 4 games on a red shirt, we can absolutely still see them in the Big 12, not the Big 12 title game. We can see them in the bowl game. We didn't really see a lot on Saturday just because the game was like it wasn't a blowout, so that we didn't see a lot of we didn't get the backups in the fourth quarter or anything like that. But otherwise, Iowa State pretty much dominated that game. Oklahoma State never really threatened the running game. Once again, went for just about 50 carries and about 4.5 yards a carry, which is what they've been doing for the last month and a half. It's pretty good, solid running game you've built around. Carson Hansen had another 100-yard game. There was a long time he didn't have a 100-yard game in his career for a long time, and now he's ripped off like 4 or 5 in a row now. And Abu Sama had himself a long touchdown run. And, overall, the offense really didn't try to do too much. They really didn't take any shots downfield. We did see a couple drops by the receivers again, unfortunately, but Chase Soul did have a couple nice plays. We saw the pop pass to Brent Bramer in the end zone. Overall, it was a very vanilla game plan. They really didn't try to do much of anything. Mysterious Stranger says this season will be a success if Campbell stays. It's a strange comment because the season's basically over already. The idea that it can only be a success if Campbell won. I just want to get this out of the way right now. I've seen and heard basically nothing that would suggest Iowa State is losing Matt Campbell, that Matt Campbell is headed anywhere. I guess it's to be with Penn State being still open. Is it possible? I guess assuming that assuming the conversation has not already taken place, and Matt Campbell has not already just kind of lightly turned them down. If Penn State has not called Matt Campbell yet, they may be getting. Not that it should have taken to this point of desperation to call Matt Campbell if you're Penn State, because he's probably the second or third best hire that you could have made in this cycle. After maybe you like Kurt Signetti better, or maybe you I don't know, pick another guy. But Matt Campbell is about as good a fit as Penn State could possibly ask for. If they have not already backed up the Brinks truck to him, and they that's not to say they can't. But I would be kind of surprised if Penn State hadn't at least tested the water a little bit, hadn't at least kind of like made a call and just like gauged interest from Matt Campbell. I'd be pretty surprised um, if that didn't happen already. But I mean, I guess that theoretically it could have. Penn State could open up other jobs. But the problem is that all the jobs that Penn State could have opened up is, I mean, they've all been filled. Like Florida's been filled, Arkansas has been filled, Auburn's been filled, Virginia Tech's been filled. Um, Ole Miss is open now, but I kind of don't think they'll really look at Matt Campbell. Matt Campbell's not a great fit there. Just culture wise, I don't think Matt Campbell's a good fit for Ole Miss. That's not a concern for me. I don't. That's really my thing here. Jason's right on the points. I don't think there's anything that's going to open up anymore. Like assuming like if Penn State goes in the direction other than Matt Campbell, right now I believe they will. But assuming Penn State goes in a direction that is not Matt Campbell, the job that's going to open up, I can't think of a single job that would open up because of that, which would be dramatically more enticing to Matt Campbell than just staying in Ames. The only I don't like I right now I don't see a college position right now that worries me for Matt Campbell. I mean, yes, Penn State, but they haven't already either they haven't called him or they did. Like they haven't called him and they're not going to, or they already did and he already said no. Like both of those things are possible. But right as far as this offseason, I just don't see it. Now, could an NFL team, come in and potentially offer him a position? Yeah, I mean, maybe. Is that enough to finally draw him? I don't know. I mean, the Jets and Lions have both offered him jobs and stuff like that. Like, so he's turned down the NFL before. And now granted, that was in like 2019, 2020, 2021, something like that, where he was really right at peak. I wouldn't say like peak respect or peak stardom necessarily, but that was in that nice golden era where he had established multiple years of success at Iowa State, but he hadn't been here so long that he was like entrenched at Iowa State, which Matt Campbell is now fully entrenched, deep roots and at Iowa State. So, it takes a lot more to upturn those trees. Yeah, Penn State could have to settle. They could have to settle for a G5 coach or Brian Kelly. I think Brian Kelly would be I mean, I don't think Brian Kelly's like a great coach, and people could just decide that they don't really want to bother with him. But the problem with the situation Penn State has themselves in is that they have to find an option that is better than James Franklin. James Franklin is a very, very good football coach, and everybody knows it. So they can't take Brian Kelly because Brian Kelly is basically objectively in every measure a worse option than James Franklin. I would bet 95% of programs would rather have James Franklin than Brian Kelly coach their football team. So for Penn State, they really can't take Brian Kelly unless it came down to a true desperation, I guess. I don't know. The problem is they may be out of options for, who's left that's at least a comparable option to James Franklin, if not better. Have they already called Kenny Dillingham from Arizona State? Has he already reaffirmed his interest? They've apparently, either they have or he has, the Matt Rule option apparently is not going to happen, even though it made tons and tons of sense. He's staying at Nebraska. For at least for right now. I don't know what their other options are that they're going to go to that they're going to see as being a legit option. That's kind of up to them, but unfortunately they put themselves in a difficult situation where they have to find somebody as good or better than James Franklin, which is a very difficult ask, especially when the theoretical options that you would have liked to get are all basically off the table, unless they can just write a blank check to, I don't know, Nick Saban. Can you get Nick Saban to come out of retirement? Can you write him a check for $15 or $20 million a year? Can you write is a check for $20 million a year enough to get him out of retirement? Is that enough? I honestly don't know. Um, what is that? Is there a number big enough to get Nick Saban out of retirement? I mean, Penn State can throw around basically infinite money. Um, so I will be curious to see what that is. But really, my point here with the Penn State thing though is if they have not already called Matt Campbell to gauge interest, they're not going to call him. It's like, even if he wasn't in the first 3 candidates that we're gonna talk to, he had to have there's no way he wasn't in the first 6 or first 10. They would have all somebody would have from Penn State would have already done something, some sort of groundwork or some legwork on gauging Matt Campbell's interest. So that's why, like, if Matt Campbell to Penn State has not already happened, I would be pretty blown away if that happened. I'm not saying it can't. I'm not saying it couldn't still happen. I guess if they all made a sufficiently large offer slash NIL commitment. But if you're Matt Campbell, James Franklin just got fired from Penn State for winning 10 games a year. I mean, where's the upside to that? Like, I know Penn State believes they can win a national title, and they can at some point, but what's the upside to that? I mean, if you don't win a national title at Penn State, it's been established that if you don't win a national title at Penn State, you will be fired. Period. There is no amount of playoff success that is good enough to keep you from not getting fired. James Franklin was like 2 plays away from making the national championship game last year. That is apparently not good enough for Penn State. They believe that they are national champion, like that they're a national championship caliber program, which they probably are. What's the upside? You're going to get fired. Like, if you don't win a national title, you're going to get fired pretty quickly. So there's not a lot of, I mean, right now they put themselves in such a difficult position that it's not only do they have to find a really, really good option. There's a lot of really good options. They may have been dissuaded from the job a little bit. Just by how they handled this whole thing. Maybe Nick Saban. I mean, Nick Saban even commented on it on game day about James Franklin, about him saying it was wrong how they treated James Franklin. And frankly, there may not be a number big enough that Penn State could write to Nick Saban to get him to come out of retirement to coach Penn State because of how they handled that situation. If it was he failed and they hired him, maybe do that. But Nick Saban made it perfectly clear publicly that he's not a fan of how Penn State handled that. So then they are going to be, stuck in a bad spot. Parents to Penn State. It would be pretty funny. But I missed one up here. Michigan next year for Campbell. I mean, maybe, I guess. So the thing with Michigan though is that Michigan likes their Michigan people. They like their coaches to have a tie to Michigan in some way, shape, or form. And Campbell has 0 ties, not just to the university, but to the state of Michigan. Outside, he's gotten some players from Michigan, but like, he's from Ohio. He's an Ohio kid that did not go to Michigan, has no connections, like no ties to the University of Michigan. If he was, for Matt Campbell, and for them to go after him, it would have to be a situation where they're going to pay him a bunch of money, give him infinite resources, which Michigan is able to do, and and still have to be able to promise some sort of patience to get things going, because they are also apparently a team that will be patient. They're more patient than Penn State apparently, but that's still another job where if you're not if you're not making deep playoff runs within a couple years of taking over, you're in deep trouble. Like, you're gonna get fired. Oh yeah, Kiffin's contract about LSU is crazy. I get it, sort of why he left, but the way he left sucks. And I don't know. That's a whole different situation, because the SEC basically is now having, like, Ole Miss is basically reaping what they sowed by voting in Oklahoma and Texas, by allowing them into the conference and getting greedy. And now they haven't, they're in a spot where they're clawing for like 6th best program in the conference and all this. So they're kind of having to, sleep in the bed they made. But we can talk about more of that in the offseason here too. Let's move on to signing day. So the 2025 high school signing day is upon us. I believe it's tomorrow actually, and obviously it's got a number of guys committed right now. Let me just check the number for sure. They have 22 commits in the class so far. I would assume most of them will be signing tomorrow. Um, I have to see if anyone the one that's like currently listed as a commit on 247 that I don't believe will be signing tomorrow. I'm not sure. And I would be surprised if he signed with Iowa State tomorrow, which is Caprice Keith. We've talked about him before. He's currently he's committed to Iowa State and he has been since last November. Iowa State wants him to play like safety, defensive back type of thing, probably safety at his size, but he apparently wants to play wide receiver. Kansas State is offering him as a wide receiver, and he took a visit there. He's been kind of courting Kansas State fans on Twitter. Right now, I'd be pretty surprised if Caprice Keith did not flip to Kansas tomorrow, or yeah, Kansas State tomorrow. Other than that, they've got a number of guys in here that I think a lot of people really like. Maybe some early impact guys. Like Jeffrey Roberts, the receiver. We'll see how quickly he can get caught up. But there's wide receiver targets to be had. Chase Soul and Brett Eskelson both were were the number 1 and 2 most of the year, but they were not without their inconsistencies and faults. Certainly, there's a spot, potentially for Jeffrey Roberts to get some snaps and maybe even on special teams or something like that, because the kid can fly. He's got wheels for days. Jeffrey Roberts is really, really good. He's going to be really, really good. Ajibole Ofuye, a little bit undersized, but on the defensive line, I think they're probably going to play him on the edge. He's a guy that there's lots and lots of snaps to be had at that edge spot, because there are a couple of guys that like you think will be starters. Jace Gilbert and Kenny Ziogu seem like they will probably be the starters, but they are absolutely not set in stone. I don't think, as far as I'm concerned, my guess is that it'll be a full position battle for edge rushers in the spring and through the fall, unless those two really, really step up. A couple other guys, Daniel Howard as a freshman on the interior defensive line, 6'2", 270s, just a touch undersized weight wise. They like to have those guys up at least at 300. But you can put on weight in the offseason, stuff like that. So maybe he gets some playing time. There's a lot of these other positions. The great part is you don't really need a lot of these guys to step up and play right away. Now, the one there, especially the kind of the exception to this, I guess, will be Lucas Tenbrock. He's the 5th ranked punter in the class, and he will be punting from day one at Iowa State, just period. He's going to be, because he's the guy. He's the punter now. So Lucas Tenbrock will play right away, and he will play every punt. But the nice part is that for a lot of these guys, you really don't need them to step up and be there right away. If you look at the highest rated recruits in the class, Caleb Francois is a running back. You're good at running, unless, I don't see any scenario where it happens, but I guess if for some reason you lose one of Sam or Hansen, I don't see why you would. I would be shocked if that happened. But he's probably not going to play, especially if Dylan Lee doesn't transfer. If Dylan Lee does transfer, then you still have Aiden Flora there. So Caleb Francois is probably not going to get much playing time next year outside of maybe a few garbage time carries. Jeffrey Roberts, sorry to talk about him. Tyrell Chapman, the safety. Problem is, Iowa State's pretty deep again at safety. But if injuries happen, then maybe. Kean Kaiser at linebacker. Iowa State's going to be pretty deep at linebacker. He's probably not going to play much. Tatum Duncan at safety, probably not going to play a lot there. Mason Bandauer at offensive tackle. Generally speaking, they don't play freshmen on the offense. They definitely, generally speaking, Brandon Black wasn't an exception to that because he was just pretty good as a freshman. Oh yeah, River Peppers will still be here for running back. So that's another one. It's easy to forget about River Peppers because he played one snap and then blew his Achilles. But and the tricky part is the timing of that. We don't know if he'll even be ready to go for next season. He might eat a red shirt this season and a medical red shirt next season, or vice versa, or something like that, just because of his injury. So that's kind of a tough situation. But he was a player that I was very, very excited about coming out of high school. I think at some point he will be very good, but unfortunately his debut for Iowa State has been pushed back by a year or two, which isn't necessarily the worst thing if he's still kind of technically a freshman by eligibility in 2027 because of a medical red shirt and a regular red shirt. once Sama and Hansen are out the door. Um, if he's still basically a freshman there by eligibility, I think that's a very good situation for Iowa State where you could have Caleb Francois um and River Peppers there as essentially freshman running backs, even though River Peppers would be in his third year in the program. Uh, Marion Jackson as a receiver again, a receiver could step up. We'll see. Josiah Zayas as a corner. I don't think he will be. I'd kind of be surprised if he got any playing time. Tight ends super deep again next year. So like guys like Arlie Morel and Drake DeBon, you're probably not going to see them. Barry Freeze is a linebacker. Bryson Williams is a safety. Case Evans is a quarterback. There's pretty much none of these guys. I mean, in every freshman class, you're going to have one or two that step up and they just are good and they just deserve playing time. But there really aren't any at any positions in this class that you think we really could use one of these guys to step up. Otherwise, we don't have, we don't have the horses to do any of this. It's one of Iowa State's honestly, it's one of Iowa State's best recruiting classes under Matt Campbell. It's going to end up. We'll see. It's probably going to end up around the somewhere in the 50s. Right now, it's sitting at 49. That might drop a touch when like Caprice Keith moves over and stuff when he switches over to Kansas State and all that. But for the most part, it's going to be one of Matt Campbell's better classes, just ratings wise. The nice part is now, like, even if you don't have any 4 stars in this class, you do still have the floor is pretty high on these. You look that and like there's 2 guys at 84, but like otherwise everyone is 85 and above, which is not necessarily been a universal thing for Iowa State. Sometimes you have a half your class sitting down there in the low 80s and some couple guys in the high 70s, and that's just sometimes it's just how it is. And those drag your class ratings down, but in the end, this is still a developmental program, so you're going to bring in people that you don't play them a lot their freshman year, but by the time they get to their sophomore and juniors, their second and third year in the program, they're veteran players. They've got lots of snaps. Doing all that, they're developing into that versus being, having to be instant impact guys right away, which is great. That's a sign that, that's just a sign that your program is in a really good spot and that you're no longer having to do all that. You're not having to hope that your freshmen work out right away. So we'll see there. As far as once we have all those guys in the program, so I want to talk about transfer portal here. This is a big one. Obviously it's got a couple. Fortunately, you're bringing back damn near everybody. So your quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, you're bringing back everybody. Or pretty much everybody. You're missing, wide receivers losing a couple of people, but for the most part, you're bringing back everybody. So Fred, we whiffed a tight end recruiting. So like we did sign 2 tight ends that are both like mid to high 3 stars. But you're right in that we did miss on a few of the 4-star targets. Like we missed on Ian Pramer, who's like point like a 94 on 247, like a mid 4-star guy. Evan Jacobson and a couple other guys. You missed on your really high end tight end targets. I don't know why that is. We'll see. Notre Dame's a good tight end program. They produce good tight ends all the time. Texas A&M probably threw a boatload of money at Evan Jacobson, and maybe he didn't want to play at the same place his brother did, even though his brother played basketball. Those things can happen. It is what it is. It sucks, but they overall were still able to pull out a pretty good class here. Not too worried about it. Actually, you know what? Before I get too far, before I get into the transfer portal stuff, I do want to talk about an interesting situation, like an interesting recruiting thing that I just happened to kind of stumble upon before. I didn't catch it earlier. So Iowa State, these are kind of your offers and stuff like that. This for this class. What I saw an interesting name down here. Elijah Reeder. He's an 89, which is a high 3-star. You're bordering on 4-star there. He's an edge prospect, 6'4" and a half, 210, so he's definitely a little undersized and all this. Um, what's interesting here, so he's actually got a crystal ball from Alec Bussey today at 11:30 a.m. What's interesting here is that that's a high 3-star guy. He should have a pretty good offer list. His offer list is us, Bryant, Monmouth, and New Haven. Bryant and Monmouth are both FCS schools. I don't even know if New Haven is even an FCS school, for their or if they are Division two. Uh, that is not a big time offer list. So what's perplexing here is he is like that's a high rating for a recruit. That's not, this isn't like a point. This isn't like a 79 that could easily have just, nobody knew him, flew under the radar. And that it's just I would say it offered a guy because they had to, because they needed a guy at this position type of thing, which I mean, that's maybe kind of what they're doing with the pass rushers. But this guy is like a borderline 4-star recruit. And he's got a few mid to bad FCS offers. So this is fascinating to me. I have not had a chance to look up his huddle tape or anything like that yet. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do that. We're going to do that together. Apparently I searched it, but I just didn't watch it. Let's just check out. So this is the same guy. Apparently he also plays wide receiver. So that's notable speed wise. Kind of tall and lanky. So that, the height's there with a good frame, playing offense there too. I mean, that's something. I was going to see if I could find some defensive highlights here. Oh, got senior year highlights. Perfect. This is like with a drone. That's crazy. So they've just been using it as so okay, because they're in green. It's not wide receiver highlights. Oh, there's a whoa. Hold on. Hold on a second. Okay. I thought they were on offense there for a second. Hold on. Okay. Okay. We may have just accidentally stumbled upon the highlight that caused Iowa State to offer him. Because if you can watch this and not see Will McDonald, I don't know, then you just didn't watch Will McDonald play. Okay. So, but watch this. He's lined up there on the edge. Holy shit. Okay. So he immediately, so this right tackle's like, fuck, shit. Oh, I fucked it. He's right there. He doesn't know what's going on. This running back's like, oh, I got to chip this guy. He said, nope. And right around. Holy cow. Okay. Now I'm interested. Right around him. He's athletic. Didn't really need to be bendy there. Forced the fumble. That's good. Fun player off the edge, man. He's got if he can put on a little bit of weight, get some, build up his strength and, get his, because right now he's basically just rushing from a standing sprinter position, essentially. He's got the quickness and he's got the elusive, the agility to get around some of these blocks. Just right around him. I mean, he's slippery. I mean, he's obviously really raw. He's basically just an athlete right now. Good job reading that. Let's watch him. Fighting through. Nice. I mean, granted, these are highlights, obviously, but I love shout out to this. I don't know if it's their program or whatever it is, but getting game tape from essentially the Madden cam. This is kind of awesome, actually. I really enjoy this. Like getting game tape from the Madden cam is kind of sweet. He's on offense now. Out there, let's see what he does. Good toughness, run right through him. Nice. Okay, you know what? So after that, after that play, uh, after that third play there, I am suddenly quite interested in landing this Elijah Reader kid as a developmental prospect. Obviously, at 210, needs to put on some weight. But it's hard not to look at this kid and look at that tape, look at what's going on here. It's hard not to see Will McDonald. He moves just like Will McDonald. Exactly right. Jason's right on it. He moves just like Will McDonald. I hope they land this kid. And listen, I don't know if it's gonna work out. He's obviously a developmental prospect. But if they didn't get this kid in there and say, like if they didn't put this kid's tape on and go, holy shit, that's Will McDonald. And then go to Elijah Reader and say, hey, he's even from New Jersey. Excellent. Right there. He's well familiar with Will McDonald. If he pays attention to the Jets, he's already well familiar with what Will McDonald is. And he's one of the best pass rushers he's probably a top 10 to 15 pass rusher in the NFL right now. And Iowa State can be like, hey, that guy that plays football, from you, plays football like right next to you in the green and white. Yeah, your tape is just like his, and we developed Will McDonald into a first-round pick. I would think Iowa State immediately saw that same play that I reacted to. I would guess Iowa State saw that same exact play and said, hell yes, we would like to offer this kid. So I am very excited for Elijah Reader. Very, very excited. Yeah. So that's a fun deal right there. So keep an eye out for him. Obviously, he's not committed yet, but they offered him today. Signing day is tomorrow, and we are far and away, without question, the best offer that he has available. So we'll see. That would be awesome if he signed with Iowa State. I would love to see that. So we'll see there. Now, back to what I was actually talking about before, which is transfer portal. Okay, so you're getting back your quarterbacks, receivers, running backs, tight ends. You're getting back pretty much all your linebackers. You're getting back your entire secondary, essentially. I don't know if you're losing anybody in the secondary. I mean, you're getting back Jontez, Jeremiah, Drew Surgis, Marcus Neal, everybody in that secondary, which is the secondary is going to be the best one in the Big 12, pretty much bar none, and one of the best in college football next year, just like they were a couple years ago. And you also have those linebackers, Caleb Bacon, Cooper Ebel, Caleb Berzina, Carson Willich. You'll have all of those guys back, plus some, the new guys coming in, and Mason Miller, Will Hawthorne, which I would be surprised if we don't see Will Hawthorne in the bowl game. I've heard his name a little bit more, a little bit recently, and I would bet that with some bowl practices, I'd be pretty surprised if Will Hawthorne and Mason Miller don't get some decent playing time in the bowl game, depending on how everything's going, obviously. So because of that, you really only have two position groups on the team that you really would like to find some transfers for. And that is on both of the lines. Now, the offensive line, I think, is a lower priority here. I don't think you need to go find a Jalen Travis. You don't need to go find, you don't need to go find an instant plug and play starter on these. I don't think. I think you've got the talent in the room to be able to do that. Right now, the interior of your line, if I were a betting man, I'd say the interior of your line is some combination of Trevor Brewer, Brennan Black, Vaea Kakula. And I would think that would be the order: left guard, center, right guard. Like, I think Vaea Kakula will play right guard or center, depending on what they want to do with him. Left tackle, you can get Austin Barrett there, who is already the backup left tackle. Maybe if Cool is ready to go. There's a few different names there. Same with right tackle. If this is where we're going to find out like how well Clanton has done in recruiting and developing that room, because you are replacing three starters. So, we'll see how that goes. But I think you've got the talent in the room to be able to do what you need to do there. One interesting player, I don't know if he's right or not, would be I think his name is Sean. It's Sione. I think it's Sean Perkins. He's a 6'9". He's 6'9" from Idaho. Obviously a tackle prospect. I don't know. We'll see if he's ready to do anything. But as Fred has implied here, the defensive line is the big one, and that means money. Serious Stranger says Rocco officially coming back. Yes, yes, Rocco is. I believe in the press. I believe in media availability this week, or in the press conference last week. He said, "I'm coming back." So yeah, I mean, the only thing that would take Rocco away is some preposterous money offer from another school. But even that, I don't know. I don't think would even be enough to turn him away. Like he's not going pro. Um, he needs another good. Like he needs to put together a good season where he doesn't you get massively hurt slash have a really terrible stretch in the middle of the season for his draft stock. He absolutely has a lot of room to improve his draft stock before the 2027 draft, for the 2027 draft. So Rocco will be back, but it's the defensive line, but the problem with the defensive line is, as Fred said, defensive line in the portal is money. So the question is what do you do there? Do you hope that that Akini Ziogu and Jace Gilbert are starter worthy players, like Big 12, like legit Big 12 starting edge rushers, um, and hope that they develop? Maybe. Do you know how, what kind of player you try to go get in the portal is going to be heavily dependent on how good you think the trio of Jace Gilbert, Kenny Ziogu, and Zamir Hawk are going to be. Now, there's Elijah Cantrell and a few other players here, and Vontre Malone. There's Trey Verdon. There's a few other players in the mix here as well to be potential starters, but you got to decide, like, do you think that group of 6 players? I mean, that'll be your 6 top end players on the defensive line. Are those 6 players Big 12 starter caliber? Like, are they going to be enough? If not, where do you go get? Like, do you feel like is edge rusher the bigger problem, or do you need to find a spot? You need to find somebody that can attempt to fill the shoes of Dominic Orange. I mean, Dominic Orange was a good enough player that if he played for another team and Iowa State wanted him, they probably could not afford to get Dominic Orange. Like they couldn't afford to pay for Dominic Orange, probably. But Zamir Hawk has played some good snaps for Iowa State. He can absolutely get better. Elijah Cantrell played some really good snaps for Iowa State last season. We can see more out of those guys for sure. But pass rusher, defensive line and pass rusher are premium positions in the portal that they cost more dollars per, based on talent relative to talent level than almost any other position, maybe except for quarterback. And I don't know what Iowa State's budget looks like for this, but they may not be able to afford a good enough defensive line player to be able to bring. And the other part of this too is, like, do you need to get 2 or 3 of them? Do you need to get, like, can you afford to just dump like a good chunk of your NIL budget? Can you afford to just dump that into one superstar defensive line player and just let that be enough? I mean, do you even want to handle it like that? Do you want to bring somebody like that on your team that makes $1 million, or $2 million or whatever it is? Like, do you want that to be the type of player you have? I mean, if I was to if Iowa State can't even afford that player, do you want that player in your roster? So they'll have to make that decision here. As far as the development piece goes, like, I think Zamir Hawk and Elijah Cantrell can be good enough in the interior that I don't think you need to find a starter in the portal for that. Yeah, I guess maybe if you find a reasonably value, if you find a good value depth piece there, maybe. Edge rusher would be the spot I would look, just because that position has been so inconsistent and just frankly just not good enough since Will McDonald left. Is there anybody on the roster that can jump up and be a dominant pass rusher? Yeah. I mean, I believe Akini Ziogu. I mean, I've harped on this a number of times on this podcast, on Down the Pipe and Light, on the Nightcap. I've harped on it a number of times that Akini Ziogu should be like a high end, day one, day high, day one, early day two draft prospect as an edge rusher. Just on his athleticism and his size, he absolutely should be up there. But he is not currently. At best, right now, he's kind of a David Irving type where like sometimes he just does things that are just unbelievable because he's got crazy size and he can be really good, but sometimes he just disappears for chunks of the game or games at a time. If you can get the light switch to come on for Kenny Ziogu, I mean, boy, I think he can be your dude. He can like you don't need to go get into the player portal if you can get the light, if you can get the light to come on for Kenny Ziogu. Same with Jace Gilbert, same with Trey Verdon, same with Vontre Malone, who didn't play a ton this year, he played some, but not a ton. And can take another jump in the second year in the program. I don't know if you need to go like I don't think there's any position that Iowa State needs to go crazy at and try to find like a starter. Um, I mean, last year they kind of ended up doing that with Trey Bell just because of the injuries, but like that's not why they got Trey Bell. They didn't get Trey Bell to start. They got him to be a depth piece. But he ended up starting and playing really well. Now you have Trey Bell back there. You have Jontas Williams, Jeremiah Cooper, Trey Bell, David Koff, and Quentin Taylor, that's a very strong top five corners on your team. I don't think that they have a single position on the team that you like have to go crazy, buy a big time starter. But it would be good if you could find a good value piece as an edge rusher, especially, um, or as a defensive tackle, really anywhere. If you can find some good value pieces to add to the rotation, I absolutely would be in favor of doing that. But if like, I think that's more valuable that if they can dedicate more of their NIL money to keeping keeping all of your starters, basically, you know, keep everybody in the program, keep Jontes here, keep Jeremiah Cooper here, I don't think Jameson Patton's going anywhere. He's a local kid, but keep Marcus Neal here. I would be shocked. I would be shocked if Marcus Neal doesn't get some big time FCC offers in the transfer portal. Like I would be blown away if Marcus Neal hasn't already gotten calls. Not just this week, but even before this week from programs saying, "Hey, we want you to come play for us next year. We'll give you a bunch of money." I don't know if he'll jump on it or not. Like he's worthy. He's that good of a player. I think he's worthy of doing that. Like I think he could transfer to most schools in the Big Ten or the SEC and start. I think he would be a starter on most SEC defenses. He's really good, but Dominic Orange stayed. I don't know why Marcus Neal couldn't stay. Fred says we'd be crazy not to look at the edge and wide receiver with all the drops we had this year. I think the wide receiver thing's an interesting one because I really do think that the talent is there. Like I think if your top three next year are Chase Soule, Brett Eskelson, and a healthy Xavier Townsend, I think that's a good top three. And it's not a group that I would guess would have drop problems 2 seasons in a row. It's certainly possible. But I think you've got talent there. Zay Robinson is another one that I think he'll get more, he'll get plenty of time. I would assume he'll get more time in the bowl game. And I think he will get plenty of time. He will get plenty of time next year as well, or plenty of opportunities to be in the starting rotation next year. So I don't think they need to go crazy in the portal for a receiver. Like I said, if they find a good name that they think they can afford and that can be at, the thing with the wide receiver is like if you can find a really good one, you take it because you could use another you could use like an alpha there right now. But wide receiver is one where getting a depth piece at wide receiver, like getting one that you're not sure if he's good enough to start, but he's probably good enough to get some snaps here and there. To me, that's a waste of money at receiver. I think the guys you have in the room right now are good enough that I'm not super worried about that right now. Like I don't think you need to sell out to find a receiver. I don't know. I don't think you need to get crazy with it. The nice thing is Zay Robinson, I believe he's only played 3 games this year. Yeah, so Zay Robinson's only played in 3 games this year. So he's absolutely going to play in the bowl game. There's no way he doesn't play in the bowl game. So I think you can if you can get starters at edge and receiver. If you can get a starter caliber player, like if you can get somebody better than Brett Eskelson in the portal, um, for receiver, I think you do it. I if you can find somebody that's better than Brett Eskelson or Chase Sowell, then go for it, and you can afford it. Sure. Um, if you can find somebody that will be able to compete, for a spot in the main rotation for the edge rushers, they don't need to be a starter, like a full on starter necessarily, but they need to be able to immediately be in that first group. That's where I think you need to go. I don't really want to see them spend a bunch of money on Cannon Butlers. Like I doubt Cannon Butler got a ton in NIL, but I don't need to be seeing Cannon Butlers that are just warm bodies. And I know that he got hurt a little bit, but he literally just didn't do anything. He was not a meaningful part of the roster. Fred says, if we didn't add anything big in the portal, I won't be down on this team. Enough pieces all over to be a 9. Absolutely. I mean, the team this year won 8 games and not 10 or 11 games or 12 games, not because they weren't good enough. It is because they weren't healthy. If this team was fully healthy, they would have finished 12-0. They would have. They absolutely. If this team was healthy, they would have been, or like reasonably healthy. If they were as healthy as Cincinnati, who like by week 10 had nobody on the injury report. If you were healthy enough to not list people on the injury report, Iowa State is 12-0. Debate a wall. They would have beat Cincinnati. They would have beat Colorado. They would have beat BYU. They would have beat Arizona State. If they were healthy, they would have beaten all those teams, and Iowa State would be undefeated in the top 6 and be playing for a Big 12 title right now. Period. Debate a wall. The talent on the roster right now is not the issue. Iowa State can win 10 games with the players on the roster. Next year, if they stay healthy, they can win 12 games. They play Texas Tech next year, but that doesn't mean they can still beat Texas Tech. It's not like they are necessarily going to lose to Texas Tech, but you do have that team next year that you have to play, but you also do get to pick up UCF and West Virginia and a couple other teams that just aren't very good. Now, West Virginia was better this year, but they weren't great. UCF was terrible. Baylor was terrible. You pick those guys up. Arizona State, yeah, we absolutely should have beat Arizona State anyways, but at least if you're healthy, you probably don't give up that long play to Jeff Sims. And you probably are, and like if Rocco's healthy, you're not having the issues on offense that you do. So, like, yes, they should have beat BYU. They should have beat Colorado. They should have beat Arizona State. And they should have beat Cincinnati, but that one was less like, it was less of a game where it's like Iowa State was going to win this thing. They should have won it, and they just didn't. Cincinnati, like, they needed to come back and all this, but like they could have and should have beaten Cincinnati. Frankly, it's injuries. If Rocco can stay healthy, if the defense can stay healthy, Iowa State absolutely can win 10 plus football games in the regular season next year. I don't think you need to make massive changes. It's not worth bringing in a problem child that is a starter caliber defensive end. If you're bringing in a player that is, a really good defensive end, but is a complete and total like locker room cancer, that's not worth it. Yeah, and frankly, not having a kicker for the Cincinnati game, and literally, if you have Kyle Conrarty, you beat Cincinnati. With nothing else changed, if you have Kyle Conrarty, you beat Cincinnati. So this team is much closer to winning. Like, it's much closer to a 10-2, 11-1 caliber football team than it is to an 8-4 caliber football team when everybody's healthy, or like a 7-5 team or something like that. It's a really good football team, and they're bringing everybody back, or pretty much everybody. So I don't think you really need to upset the apple cart too much in the transfer portal. I don't really have too much else to talk about today. If anyone's got any more questions they want me to answer, absolutely throw them in the chat and hang out for a few minutes. Ordinarily we go an hour, so I've got, theoretically at least another 10 minutes if we got questions, and I'm perfectly happy to go longer than that if we've got good questions. But Transfer portal, I don't think we need to get too crazy. Jason says, I thought I heard Campbell say we'll have 33 seniors next year. If that's the case, we should be solid. Yeah. So next year, Iowa State is going to be very good. Like short of injuries, short of some like some portal exodus that doesn't make any sense, or like something catastrophic happens in the portal. I would say it's going to be pretty good next year. Good enough to absolutely go and try to win a Big 12 title. The way they should have been good enough to do that this year, if not for the injuries. So, you get to 2027, you're in like 2027 probably looks a lot like 2022 did, where you've got some talent on the roster, but it's it's big overhaul, big roster turnover. The team is very young. You have a new quarterback. 2026 is going into the season is going to look a lot like what 2021 was. Now, granted, you won't be coming off of a Fiesta Bowl win and be like number 8 in the polls when they come out. I would say probably won't be ranked when the polls come out, unless they get like a marquee opponent in a bowl game and they blow them out or something like that. Probably not going to be ranked in the preseason, and that's fine. But obviously it's good enough to win a Big 12 title next year and make a playoff. Stranger says, would you rather play the Cyhawk annually or play 2 times over 4 years and rotate in another Power 4 opponent? Excellent question. I think so. The problem right now is Iowa is generally a good Power 4 opponent. Like that's a good team on the schedule. It's a good win to have, generally speaking. Fred, we still thinking Tempe. As of right now, I believe Iowa State will probably be in the Rate Bowl against some Big Ten school, but I don't know who. I don't know for sure yet. I don't think Orlando and Memphis will. I think the Bulls / Jamie Pollard will talk to each other and say I don't really want to do that. I think Iowa State I think for Iowa State and Iowa both benefit quite a lot from playing the Cyhawk game every year. As much as Iowa fans would love to tell you that there's no benefit, shut up. Iowa State's won 3 out of the last 4, and Kirk is barely over 500 against Iowa State in his Iowa tenure. But so don't give me any of that Iowa State Iowa's owned the series or anything like that. It's like maybe for like 2010 to 2020 for sure, but beyond that, not really. I think you got to play the game every year. It's too much economic impact on the state. It's a fierce rivalry. Like college football is one of the biggest pieces of the fabric of college football is rivalries. It's in-state rivalries, it's interconference rivalries and stuff like that. Tearing apart the Iowa State rivalry. If you were gonna rotate in another Power 4 opponent, you would want it to be a team close by. Nebraska, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Missouri. Pretty much one of those 4. If it wasn't one of those 4 every year, then it's a waste. You could talk me into an Iowa State Wisconsin series. If you could if you did this thing where if you did a thing where Iowa State, Iowa, and Wisconsin we have this triangle thing where they just kind of rotate around, if you could somehow create a 3-way series between Iowa State, Iowa, and Wisconsin, kind of the way similar to the way the Commander-in-Chief trophy between the service academies, the state of Utah has one too for Utah, BYU, and Utah State. According to the Big 12, we don't have any conference rivalries. Yeah, so keep this out. Yeah, apparently Iowa State and Kansas State just doesn't count, I guess. And more people should consider Iowa State, Oklahoma State. But what do I know? We'd rather send Iowa State to UCF 3 times in 4 years and then protect the Farmageddon rivalry, I guess. And I think there's a lot of Kansas State fans that I think if they had to choose between playing. I've heard a lot of Kansas State fans said if they had to choose between protecting us as a rival and protecting Kansas as a rival, that they would prefer to protect us. but that's not probably. I'm sure that's not I would guarantee that is not a consensus amongst Kansas State fans, but I've heard that sentiment before. Um, so, but anyways, long story short, I think you got to play Cyhawk every year. I wish we could bring in another Power Four opponent. I really do think a series with Wisconsin would be back. A home with Wisconsin, a home with Nebraska, home with Missouri to for that old rivalry. I think that would be fun. I really do. I think that would be a lot of fun to involve another Midwestern state. Illinois would be a fun one. Purdue, kind of the battle of the engineering schools. It would be granted Purdue sucks, but and Minnesota wasn't very good this year either. But or Wisconsin, but historically Wisconsin's a good program. If you could get a home and home with a neighboring state at least, or a Midwest state, I think that would be really cool. But with the Big 12 being nine games and already having a yearly Power 4 opponent there, it's just like adding another Power 4 game in there just doesn't make sense. We are adding difficulty to the schedule for no benefit whatsoever. I would love and that's why if we could ever play Missouri in a bowl game, I would love to play Missouri in a bowl game, one, because I think we could beat them, but two, because I want to see that telephone trophy back up for grabs. It's been sitting in Columbia for 15 years now. So I would like to see the telephone trophy go back up for grabs. And so I would like to play Missouri in a bowl game sometime. I think it'd be fun. I'd like to play Nebraska in a bowl game. I'd like to, I think that'd be fun. And absolutely, Iowa State, Nebraska in the Rate Bowl is 100% a possibility. And I think a lot of Cyclone fans will travel down for that. Even though it's on the 26th. I think if it was going to happen, if that is how the bowl game was going to work out, I think I would try to find an early flight out on the 26th, like the morning of the 26th, fly out that morning. And I mean, maybe even fly back that evening or fly back first thing in the morning. Something like that. But, I think the Rate Bowl against Nebraska would be a lot of fun. But frankly, as long as it's not Memphis in Memphis, I'm good. If we had to go to Memphis, let us at least play an SEC team. But I couldn't be less interested in playing Memphis in Memphis. So, alrighty. I think we got the questions pretty much wrapped up. Appreciate everybody for tuning in this week to this episode of Iowa State Cyclones Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm Levi Stevenson. We'll see you guys again next week. We will talk about Iowa State's bowl placement and what they can do over the bowl games, what we'd like to see during the bowl game. Obviously, like to see them what they can do over the bowl practices, as far as who we'd like to see step up and here as being the guys that are going to play in the bowl game. Kind of the next up. Bowl practices are when we typically see young guys. That's when they get starter reps, and we can see them step up. So, yeah, I think we would blast Nebraska. I really do too. So, all righty, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys again next week. Talk about the bowl game.